Welcome back to History for Sleep. This channel is a quiet place to explore humanity's past, the forces that shaped ancient civilizations, and the forgotten stories that still echo beneath modern history. If you enjoy calm, detailed storytelling you can listen to while resting or falling asleep, consider subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with someone who enjoys peaceful history. Tonight, we're going to explore a kind of conflict that rarely makes it into textbooks. Not wars fought over kings or borders alone, but wars fought over resources so vital that entire empires rose, clashed, and collapsed because of them. Resources that were once as valuable as gold, sometimes more valuable: salt, water, copper, tin, incense, spices, stone, and the hidden routes that carried them across the ancient world. When we imagine ancient warfare, we often picture armies meeting on open fields or besieging great cities. But behind many of those battles was something quieter and more strategic: control. Control of roads, rivers, mountain passes, deserts, and sea lanes. Control of who could move essential materials and who could not. Long before modern supply chains, ancient empires understood a simple truth: you could not survive without access to vital resources, and you could not maintain power without controlling the routes that delivered them. These routes were lifelines, and when lifelines were threatened, empires went to war. One of the most important and least discussed of these resources was salt. Today, salt is ordinary. In the ancient world, it was essential. Salt preserved food. Salt maintained health. Salt sustained armies on long campaigns. Without salt, cities starved. Entire trade networks formed around salt production and transport. In Africa, trans-Saharan salt routes connected desert mines to distant kingdoms. In Europe, salt roads linked coastal regions to inland settlements. Control of salt routes meant control of survival. In ancient China, salt monopolies funded dynasties and armies. Rebellions often erupted not because of ideology, but because salt access was restricted or taxed too heavily. Some historians argue that several major uprisings labeled as political were, at their core, resource revolts. Empires understood this, and they defended salt routes fiercely. Water, even more than salt, shaped conflict. Rivers were not just natural features. They were highways. The Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River. These waterways allowed food, materials, and people to move efficiently. Control the river and you controlled the economy. In Mesopotamia, city-states repeatedly clashed over irrigation canals and water rights. Treaties were written to regulate flow, and wars were fought when agreements broke down. Archaeological evidence suggests that some of the earliest recorded conflicts were not about land, but about access to water. In dry regions, a diverted canal could mean famine, and famine meant collapse. The Assyrian Empire understood this better than most. They targeted water infrastructure during campaigns, destroying canals and wells to cripple resistance. War was not just about defeating armies. It was about cutting supply. This strategy appears again and again throughout ancient history. In the Bronze Age, another resource quietly reshaped the world: tin. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. Copper was relatively common. Tin was not. Major tin sources were scattered and rare, found in places like modern-day Afghanistan, Cornwall, and parts of Iberia. Yet bronze weapons and tools appeared across the ancient world. This means tin traveled vast distances, and those distances mattered. Entire trade routes existed solely to move tin from distant mines to manufacturing centers. When these routes were disrupted, civilizations faltered. Around 1200 BCE, many Bronze Age societies collapsed almost simultaneously. Cities burned. Trade networks vanished. Writing systems disappeared. This event, often called the Bronze Age collapse, remains one of history's greatest mysteries. One theory suggests that disruptions to tin supply played a significant role. Whether through war, climate change, piracy, or political instability, the breakdown of resource routes may have weakened entire systems beyond recovery. Empires did not just fight over tin. They depended on it. Copper routes mattered as well. In Cyprus, vast copper mines fueled Mediterranean trade. The island became strategically valuable not for its land, but for what lay beneath it. Mycenaean Greeks, Egyptians, and Near Eastern powers all sought access to Cypriot copper. Naval power expanded to protect these routes. Sea battles followed. Conflict moved from land to water. As maritime trade increased, control of straits and ports became crucial. The Aegean Sea, the Bosporus, the Red Sea. Whoever controlled these passages controlled trade. And trade meant power. Incense was another forgotten resource that shaped conflict. Frankincense and myrrh were not luxuries alone. They were central to religion, medicine, and ritual. Temples consumed enormous quantities. Kings displayed power through scent. The incense route stretched from southern Arabia to the Mediterranean, passing through harsh deserts and fortified caravan cities. Kingdoms like Nabatea grew wealthy by controlling these routes. When Rome expanded, it did not only conquer land. It sought control of incense trade. Military campaigns followed trade paths. Forts protected caravans. Empires expanded not randomly but strategically. Spices followed a similar pattern. Cinnamon, pepper, cloves. These were worth more than gold by weight. They preserved food, masked decay, and symbolized status. The spice routes connected India, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Wars were fought over ports, islands, and sea lanes tied directly to spice movement. Later empires would continue this pattern, but the foundation was ancient. Even stone itself could provoke conflict. High-quality building stone was not evenly distributed. Granite, basalt, limestone. Quarries became strategic assets. Control of stone meant control of monuments, fortifications, and prestige. Some ancient campaigns targeted quarry regions specifically, knowing that future construction depended on them. Routes linking quarries to cities were guarded as carefully as grain roads. As we move deeper into this story, it becomes clear that ancient empires were not simply reacting to one another. They were reacting to geography. Resources shaped borders. Routes shaped strategy. And conflict followed necessity. Tonight, we will continue tracing these forgotten resource routes. We will look at specific empires, specific wars, and the theories and conspiracies that suggest some conflicts were never about ideology at all. They were about survival. As these ancient routes stretched across continents, they quietly shaped the rise and fall of empires in ways that often remain invisible in traditional histories. Empires did not always announce why they marched. They spoke of honor, divine will, or rightful rule. But beneath those declarations, resource routes often dictated action. In the ancient Near East, the Assyrian Empire expanded with ruthless efficiency. Their campaigns followed a clear pattern. They targeted cities along major trade corridors. They seized river crossings. They controlled mountain passes. The Assyrians understood that controlling land meant little without controlling movement. By dominating the roads connecting Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and the Levant, they could tax trade, restrict rivals, and supply their armies with remarkable consistency. This logistical mastery allowed Assyria to project power far beyond its core territory. When rebellion occurred, Assyria often responded by destroying local infrastructure. Wells were filled, fields burned, routes severed. The goal was not just punishment, it was dependency. If a region could not support itself or trade freely, it would remain weak. Egypt faced similar pressures. The Nile made Egypt wealthy, but it also made Egypt predictable. Foreign powers knew that controlling access to the Nile Delta meant controlling Egypt's lifeline. The Hyksos, a foreign ruling group, likely gained power not through overwhelming military strength, but by exploiting trade routes and chariot technology moving through the eastern delta. Later, Egypt fought repeated campaigns in the Levant not to conquer land for its own sake, but to secure buffer zones around critical trade routes. Timber from Lebanon was essential for shipbuilding and monumental construction. Gold from Nubia funded temples and armies. Copper from Sinai supported tool and weapon production. Egyptian military expeditions often followed the paths of these resources. When routes were threatened, war followed. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire rose to prominence by controlling tin and silver routes connecting Mesopotamia to the Aegean. Their conflict with Egypt culminated in the famous Battle of Kadesh. This battle is often described as a clash of superpowers. But beneath the banners and treaties was a struggle for control over trade corridors through Syria. The resulting peace treaty did not redraw borders dramatically. It stabilized routes. Trade resumed. Empires survived. This pattern repeats across time. Wars that appear inconclusive militarily often succeed economically, because their true objective was not conquest. It was access. In the Indus Valley, trade networks extended from South Asia to Mesopotamia. Seals, beads, and metals found far from their origin reveal a complex web of exchange. When these routes declined, the urban centers of the Indus civilization faded. Some scholars suggest climate change altered river courses, disrupting trade. Others argue that conflict over resources strained systems already under pressure. The truth may involve both. Trade routes are vulnerable. They depend on stability. When instability grows, routes collapse. In ancient Greece, access to grain was a constant concern. Greece itself was not well suited to large-scale grain production. As city-states grew, they became dependent on imported food. Grain routes from the Black Sea became critical. Control of the Hellespont, the narrow strait connecting the Aegean to the Black Sea, meant control of Athens' food supply. This vulnerability shaped Greek politics and warfare. Athens invested heavily in naval power not for glory but for survival. When rival powers threatened grain routes, conflict became inevitable. The Peloponnesian War was influenced as much by trade and supply as by ideology. When Athens lost access to grain, famine followed. Empires weaken when routes fail. In Rome, this lesson was well understood. Rome's expansion followed roads. Literal roads. Roman engineers built an extensive network designed to move troops, resources, and information quickly. These roads were not neutral infrastructure. They were tools of control. Once built, they locked regions into Roman supply systems. Grain from Egypt fed Rome. Oil from Hispania fueled lamps. Metals from Gaul armed legions. When these routes were disrupted, the empire trembled. Piracy in the Mediterranean became a serious threat not because pirates were strong, but because they interrupted supply. Rome responded with overwhelming force. Not to protect honor, to protect food. As the empire grew, its dependence on long-distance routes increased. This dependence became a weakness. When borders were pressured and internal stability declined, routes failed. Grain shipments slowed. Cities starved. Rebellions spread. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire was not caused by a single invasion. It was the unraveling of a logistical network too complex to sustain under stress. Some historians argue that Rome's true enemy was not barbarian armies, but the fragility of its supply lines. This idea challenges traditional narratives. It reframes collapse as systemic rather than dramatic, and it aligns with a broader truth. Empires are not built on power alone. They are built on movement. Movement of goods, movement of people, movement of resources. When movement stops, power fades. As we continue, we'll look at lesser-known conflicts driven by forgotten resources, and the theories that suggest some ancient wars were misrepresented or misunderstood. For now, let the pattern settle. Routes create empires. Routes sustain them. And when routes are lost, empires follow. As the pattern becomes clearer, smaller empires and lesser-known conflicts begin to take on new meaning. They were not small because they lacked ambition. They were small because they sat at crossroads. In Central Asia, vast stretches of land that appear empty on modern maps were once among the most contested regions on Earth. The Silk routes did not form a single road. They were a web, a shifting network of paths that adapted to seasons, politics, and danger. Caravans carried silk, jade, spices, horses, metals, and ideas. Cities rose where routes converged, and empires fought to control them. The Persian Empire understood this deeply. Rather than ruling through constant military force, Persia invested in infrastructure: roads, relay stations, protected corridors. The royal road stretched across the empire, allowing messages and goods to travel faster than ever before. This was not generosity, it was strategy. By securing trade routes, Persia ensured loyalty, tax revenue, and stability. When routes were threatened, Persia responded decisively. Rebellions often broke out not at the center of the empire, but at its edges, where control over movement weakened. Alexander the Great followed these same routes. His conquests did not wander aimlessly. They traced established corridors of trade and supply. Cities he founded often sat at strategic points along rivers or roads. Alexander's empire fractured quickly after his death, but the routes remained. They outlived rulers. In North Africa, control of trans-Saharan trade routes created powerful kingdoms long before European contact. Gold from West Africa traveled north. Salt traveled south. Camel caravans crossed deserts once thought impassable. Kingdoms like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai grew rich by controlling caravan cities and taxing trade. When rival groups seized these nodes, war followed. European chroniclers later described these conflicts as tribal or chaotic. But archaeological and economic evidence tells a different story. These were organized struggles over logistics, over who controlled the flow of essential resources. In the Americas, similar dynamics played out. The Maya did not rely on large draft animals or wheeled transport. Their trade routes followed rivers, coastlines, and elevated causeways. Obsidian was one of the most critical resources. Sharp, volcanic glass used for tools and weapons. Control of obsidian sources meant military advantage. Cities competed for access. Alliances shifted. Conflict followed the stone. In the Andes, the Inca built an extensive road system spanning mountains, deserts, and forests. This network allowed rapid movement of troops and resources. Relay runners carried messages. Storehouses along the roads held food and supplies. This system allowed the Inca to respond quickly to rebellion or scarcity. But it also meant dependence. When the Spanish disrupted these routes, the empire faltered. Not because the Inca lacked courage or organization, but because their lifelines were cut. Some conspiratorial theories suggest that certain ancient wars were deliberately reframed by later historians to hide economic motives. That rulers preferred stories of divine destiny over admissions of resource dependency. There is some truth here. Ancient inscriptions often emphasize honor, gods, and kingship. They rarely mention supply shortages or trade disputes. But silence does not mean absence. Economic motives often remain unstated. They are assumed. Modern historians reconstruct these motives through archaeology, trade goods, and geographic analysis. Sometimes the evidence is subtle. A city fortified heavily despite peaceful rhetoric. A sudden increase in military presence along a trade corridor. A shift in settlement patterns near resource zones. These clues suggest that ancient leaders understood something timeless. You cannot rule what you cannot supply. This understanding gave rise to strategies that look eerily modern. Blockades, sanctions, resource denial. Ancient sieges often targeted grain stores rather than walls. Cities could endure assault. They could not endure starvation. Some conspiratorial narratives take this further, suggesting that entire historical timelines were shaped to conceal resource wars. That conflicts were reframed as religious or cultural clashes to legitimize conquest. While this idea is difficult to prove, it reflects an enduring pattern. Victors write history, and victors rarely admit their dependence. They present conquest as destiny, not necessity. As we reflect on these forgotten routes, it becomes clear that ancient empires were not driven solely by ambition or belief. They were driven by logistics, by geography, by the simple need to survive. This does not diminish their achievements. It humanizes them. Empires were not abstractions. They were systems, fragile systems, dependent on roads, rivers, and trust. As the night deepens, let this understanding rest gently. History becomes quieter when we see it this way, less dramatic, more truthful. Empires rise not only through strength but through access. They fall not only through defeat but through disconnection. And the forgotten routes, long buried beneath sand and forest, still whisper this lesson to those who listen patiently. As we continue, the idea of forgotten routes begins to expand beyond roads and rivers. Some routes were never meant to be obvious. They were seasonal, hidden, known only to those who depended on them. In arid regions, certain paths existed only when rains came. Dry riverbeds became highways for a few weeks each year. Nomadic groups memorized these cycles, passing the knowledge orally across generations. Empires that failed to understand these rhythms often suffered. Armies marched confidently into unfamiliar terrain, only to find water gone, supplies exhausted, and escape impossible. Some ancient defeats were not the result of inferior strategy, but ignorance of invisible routes. In Arabia, incense routes shifted constantly to avoid banditry and political instability. Caravans relied on alliances with local tribes who knew which wells still flowed and which paths were safe. Control of knowledge mattered as much as control of land. This creates another layer of conflict rarely discussed: information warfare. Some groups guarded route knowledge jealously. Maps were rare. Directions were encoded in story, song, and ritual. Losing elders meant losing navigation. Some historians believe that certain ancient collapses occurred not because resources vanished, but because knowledge of how to reach them was lost. This idea unsettles modern assumptions. We assume that once a route exists, it can be rediscovered. In reality, routes tied to subtle environmental cues can disappear entirely. Shifting sands, changing coastlines, altered rivers. Climate change quietly erased paths that once sustained empires. This brings us to one of the more debated theories surrounding ancient resource conflicts: that some wars were sparked by environmental change rather than ambition. Droughts redirected rivers. Colder climates shortened growing seasons. Resources that once flowed freely became scarce. Empires accustomed to abundance suddenly faced limits. And limits provoke conflict. Archaeological evidence suggests that climate stress coincided with many ancient wars. The Late Bronze Age collapse occurred during a period of instability marked by drought and migration. When harvests failed, trade slowed. When trade slowed, alliances fractured. War followed, not because rulers wanted more, but because they feared losing everything. Some conspiratorial interpretations take this further. They suggest that ancient elites understood long-term environmental cycles and concealed this knowledge, that they stockpiled resources, that they engineered conflicts to control shrinking supplies. While direct evidence is limited, the idea reflects a deeper truth. Power often involves anticipating scarcity before others do. Those who act early survive. Those who react late fall. In ancient China, control of iron production and salt distribution allowed certain states to dominate rivals. The Qin state standardized weights, measures, and infrastructure to streamline supply. This was not merely administrative reform. It was logistical domination. By controlling how resources moved, Qin controlled who could resist. This led to unification and to repression. Empires that mastered logistics often appeared invincible, until they were not, because centralized systems are efficient but brittle. When a single route fails, the consequences ripple outward. This fragility appears again and again. The Aztec Empire relied on tribute flowing into its capital. When Spanish forces disrupted these flows and allied with disgruntled tributary states, the system collapsed rapidly. Not because Aztec warriors lacked skill, but because the economic network that sustained the empire was turned against it. Some theorists argue that ancient empires were more like organisms than machines. They required constant circulation. When circulation stopped, decay began. This biological metaphor helps explain why forgotten routes matter. They were arteries, hidden beneath the surface, vital, and often overlooked until they failed. As we move further into this story, it becomes clear that ancient conflicts cannot be fully understood without tracing these invisible lines. Lines of salt and water, lines of metal and stone, lines of trust and knowledge. Empires clashed not just over territory, but over the right to keep these lines open, to control who benefited and who did not. The past becomes quieter when we listen this way, less heroic, more human, and perhaps more instructive. Because the same patterns continue today, beneath modern language and modern technology. But for now, there is no need to draw those connections. Let the ancient world remain where it is, a place of long journeys, slow caravans, rivers that shape destiny, and roads worn smooth by countless feet, carrying resources that quietly determine the fate of empires. As the story deepens, one final layer of these ancient resource conflicts comes into focus: the role of belief. Religion, ritual, and ideology were not separate from resource control. They were often woven into it. Sacred status protected vital routes. Temples were built near springs, mines, and crossroads. Declaring a site holy discouraged interference and legitimized control. Pilgrimage routes often followed trade routes. Offerings moved alongside goods. Belief created stability, and stability allowed resources to flow. In Mesopotamia, certain canals were placed under divine protection. Damaging them was not just a crime against the state but a sin. This discouraged sabotage. In Mesoamerica, obsidian sources were associated with deities. Control of these sources was framed as divine favor. Religion reinforced logistics. This does not mean belief was invented cynically. Rather, belief and necessity grew together. People understood that survival depended on cooperation. Ritual reinforced that cooperation. But when belief systems collided, conflict intensified. Wars framed as holy often concealed resource competition. Sacred language justified extreme measures. It mobilized populations. It simplified complex struggles into moral narratives. This framing appears across civilizations, and it obscures economic realities. Some conspiratorial perspectives argue that ancient elites deliberately used belief to disguise resource wars. While this interpretation can be overstated, there is evidence that religious justification made resource control more acceptable. People are more willing to sacrifice when they believe the cause is sacred. Empires understood this. They shaped narratives accordingly. As these narratives faded over time, what remained were myths of destiny and heroism. The routes themselves vanished, covered by sand, overgrown by forest, lost beneath modern cities. Archaeologists continue to rediscover fragments. A road emerging from desert, a canal revealed by drought, a port submerged beneath rising seas. Each discovery reconnects us to forgotten systems. And with each discovery, the pattern repeats. Empires clashed where routes crossed, where resources flowed, where survival depended on movement. The ancient world was not static. It was dynamic, interconnected, fragile. Tonight's journey does not end with a single answer, because there is no single answer. There is only an understanding that history is shaped as much by what moves as by who rules, that forgotten routes mattered more than remembered battles, and that ancient conflicts, when viewed quietly, reveal a world driven not by chaos or fate, but by the careful management of necessity. As you rest now, there is nothing to solve. The past has already spoken. It has spoken through stone and silence, through abandoned roads and dry canals, through the absence of what once sustained entire civilizations. Let those echoes fade gently, like footsteps along a long-forgotten road, like caravans disappearing into the horizon. The ancient empires have had their say, and now they rest, just as you can.